Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at theDove.us. Well, welcome back. I've been looking forward to our next guest for quite some time, and let me just say, first of all, there is a book and a DVD out that Anita has written, and we are delighted to have with us today Anita Dittman. She's a Jewish believer since the age of 7, a Holocaust survivor, and the author of this book that I hold in my hand here called Trapped in Hitler's Hell. And there's also an accompanying DVD. You may want to check this out. It is put out by WorldNet Daily Books, so you may want to check it out at the bookstores, Amazon, and get a copy of it. And what an honor to have her with us today. Anita, hi. How are you?
Hi. Oh, I'm fine. And how are you?
Oh, fine. You know, you're special already because my mother's name is Anita.
Oh.
Nice to have you with us. Quite a story. First of all, try to give us your life story in a nutshell.
Well, I was born in East Germany in 1927, and the city's name was Breslau. My mother came from a somewhat Orthodox Jewish background, and my Aryan father, as Hitler called them, was an atheist. My mother had kind of deviated from her religion that she was on, and so there was no Christian nurture in the family whatsoever. So my older sister and I didn't know what we were missing, but we were so comfortably wealthy. I was born with a very agile body, and so my mother enrolled me in ballet at age 4. My teacher saw my talent, and she said, "Girl, I'll make you into a prima ballerina, and someday you will just have a wonderful life." And she predicted all the perks that I could have, and I was enchanted by that and gave it my all. And ballet became the center of my life.
Wow.
When I was in everything, the first 5.5 years of my life were very easy, very ordinary. But when Hitler came to power, everything changed. Wow. Hitler hated the Jews with a passion, and they were at the top of the list of undesirables. And yes, the scene of my life became drastically different.
Now, what happened at the age of 7?
That was wonderful. I had been going to church. With some friends that kids played with me several times, and they invited me to an Easter morning service. And it was in that little church that Christ came into my life. It was nothing overly dramatic. It was real. It was not a child's fantasy, and it made me realize that losing my ballet was nothing compared to the joy I had with me having Christ in my life. And I tried to share that with my mother and my older sister, but they weren't ready for that. They just laughed at it and thought it was a childish fantasy. And I kept telling them, no, it's real, but they didn't come to that later on. So
your mother did convert? Did your mother convert?
Eventually, when I was about 11 years old, wow. A pastor of the inner city church, who was a very confessional pastor, who didn't sell out to the Nazis, he invited us to come, and he didn't force us, give us a Bible. And it was after a few months of listening to him and seeing him display Christ in his life, because of his love for the Jewish people. He was already on the blacklist of the Gestapo, but he just kept on loving the Jewish people, inviting them to church, and many people came to know Christ through him, and my mother was one of them. And I get kind of creepy when I talk about it, because finally she realized what I was trying to share with them at the time was real and not a fantasy, and she apologized to me. The light is going out.
Oh, that is wonderful. That is wonderful. Now, when did Hitler come to power? How old were you when Hitler came to power?
5.5. And okay. I was exactly 5.5 when Hitler came to power.
Okay.
And my father left us early on because he didn't want to be married to a Jew, and that jeopardized our safety, because people who remained married to their Aryan partners were slightly protected, not completely, but this was devastating. And he just took off, and for a while he was gone completely, and finally he came back, and of course he sided with the Nazis. So my mother told me early, she said, when you see your father, when you had your visiting privileges, keep your mouth shut, don't say anything, just listen to him talk.
Wow.
So I couldn't trust my own father.
All right, so let's fast forward a little bit. When were you sent to a concentration camp? What were the conditions then?
Well, it was pretty bad. We were about, I would say, 300 of us, and I was not picked up. I had a chance to contact my mother in the camp and let her know that I have to go to a camp. My mother already was in a camp, a different one in Theresienstadt, Czechoslovakia. This was a camp strictly for people who had one Aryan and one Jewish parent. Oh. And I was one of the younger ones. Their ages were age 14 to age 65, and I was 17 then. About 150 women or more were housed in a barn, a filthy old cow barn that had never been cleaned out. It was just covered with fresh straw. And the toilet facility was impossible. It was a ditch outside in the back of the barn, and the washing facility was a faucet of cold water. And so the authorities gave us little enamel pans that we could wash. The men were lived under similar circumstances, little ways from the women. It was not a camp that was surrounded by barbed wire, but there was very, very strict supervision because we had many SS people watching over us. We were awakened about 4 a.m. We were counted and recounted and insulted verbally, and then reminded that we should be so proud to work for the Führer, which they called Hitler, which means leader. And we got a cup of imitation coffee in a little enamel cup. And the food was a piece of bread with margarine, and then we were loaded up with digging equipment, picks, shovels, and spades. And then we were marched off. It was August, it was hot, so we worked digging ditches. When we came to the place where we were digging ditches, we were told that these ditches are to be used by the country to trap the tanks that would come into the country, although Hitler was claiming he was winning. We worked about 8 to 10 hours digging ditches. The ditches were probably about 10 to 15 feet wide, about 8 feet. Anyway, they were big enough to trap the tanks.
Right.
We were not allowed to talk to each other, but those of us that were Christians, while we were digging, we couldn't stop talking about Jesus. And pretty soon we had a little band of Christians, and we would meet after 10 hours of hard labor and a skimpy, watery meal. We had free time, and after we had our bath in the little enamel pan, we could then have free time. And we would meet in the corner of the barn, and we had a wonderful time praying for one another. It was very strengthening.
Whoa. So how long were you in the concentration camp?
Actually, only 6 months. And then it was winter. Then 5 of us girls were able to escape with God's help. We prayed all night long the night before that if it was God's will to free us from our persecutors, please help us, Lord. And he did. It's so remarkable. People have to read it. It's so remarkable how God engineered the escape. Only a God like ours can engineer something that's perfect.
Well, tell us about the escape.
Yeah. The night before, when we were marching home from work, we had been moved to a different location where we were working in the forest, and our camp was surrounded by a lot of woodland. And in the evening before, our women's quarters were locked up so tight, we could only look through tiny little glass windows to see what was going on out there. The Russians had come so close that we could hear it. We could smell the war, we could hear it, we could feel the vibrations beneath. And that night is when God worked for us the next morning. We were all rounded up the next morning early, without any food, without anything, and all the women, we were separated from the men, and we were driven off with, what do they call it? Big wagons that were pulled by horses and chauffeured by Polish prisoners of war that worked like slaves for German farms. Wow. And we were whisked off. And finally, after a long ride, like old ride, it was, to be exact, February 11th, 1945. At that moment, when we came into the camp, our leader said, I need 2 volunteers because we have to go to the manufacturing place that own this place, that we need keys, we need lamps, and so forth. So my best friend and I, we volunteered. And this Polish prisoner of war took us off, and so we bribed him with cigarettes that we had saved and some money that we had stored away. And there were 5 of us. 3 of them escaped through the woods, and we were going to meet them at the railroad station. And my friend Hella and I took the ride with a Polish prisoner of war, and after we gave him cigarettes and some money, he whipped the horses. We almost flew. It was so amazing.
Wow.
And finally, this isn't finished yet. And so then we passed a railroad station. He let us off, and there were German soldiers, and they were standing there, and there were flat beds that were pulled by a big train, several, and there were tanks on the flatbed. And I went over to one of the soldiers. I looked the most Aryan. I had blonde hair like my father's side of the family. And I said to him, there are 5 of us here. We try to get away from the Russians, which was true too. Where are you going? What is on the flatbed? What tanks are they? Oh, they said they're slightly demolished tanks, Russian tanks, and we're shipping them to Fürstenwalde near Berlin, and the train will be leaving soon. Oh, we said, could we possibly, ride with you? Because we're trying to escape from the Russians. And he said, well, let me ask my CO. And he said, excuse me, Larry, the light is out again. I look better in the dark anyway.
Yeah. Let me do this, Anita. Let me do this, Anita. I got to take a quick break, and we'll come back and have you finish that story, okay?
It's so fantastic. I got to finish. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back with Anita Dittman,
Sure.
And she's the author of the book Trapped in Hitler's Hell, and a DVD. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with our very special guest today, Anita Dittman. She's the author of this book called Trapped in Hitler's Hell. A young Jewish girl's discovers the Messiah faithfulness in the midst of the Holocaust. And let me encourage you to check it out. The forward of this book, by the way, is our good friend Ray Comfort. and it's put up by WND Books. That's WorldNet Daily, so you may want to check it out at the bookstores or online, and be listening. We're going to give away a copy of the book and the DVD here in just a few moments. Anita, before we went to the break, you were giving us the fascinating story of how you were able to break free, and you're at the train station. Tell us what happened from then on.
Okay, when the soldier came back from talking to the CO, he smiled and he said, "You can ride with us if you don't mind sharing a compartment that's made for three with the two soldiers. You're welcome to ride with us." And of course, we were deliriously happy. Only we had to be very careful how we reacted. And it was amazing how we fit into it. Of course, none of us were overweight after years of starvation. And the whistle blew, and we were gone. And God finally stopped the train near Fürstenwalde, and the soldiers let us out. There were lots of little things to be told, but the book writes.
Yeah. How did you find?
By the way, Jan Markell wrote the story. I'm the subject.
Oh, how did you find your mother after that?
Oh, that's a very long story.
But you did find her, right?
Yes, I did find her, and she we hadn't heard anything from each other for over 11 months.
Wow.
It was a wonderful reunion, and as you can see, I'm getting kind of emotional about it when I think about it, because it was so amazing because of the things that happened before we saw each other, that both of us stayed alive.
Wow. Anita, you've come through a piece of world history that few will ever know and experience like you have. You have some warnings for America. You sense some things going on in our country that literally have given you nightmares. What would you like to say to our audience about that?
Pray. Pray. Pray and have faith in God. Even though things are going to get worse, we have a wonderful God. He can carry us through everything. But people need to listen. They need to learn. And also, I think they have to be informed about things. And with me, of course, I'm more than informed. I lived through it. Mm-hmm. And I see a lot of similarities, because more and more is done by the government, less is done by the people. It reminds me very much of what happened even before Hitler took over. I was very young, but I could still see it. And of course, my mother told me a lot of things, but these signs, and of course, Hitler took over when Germany was going through a financial crisis. The economy was bad. And unfortunately, also, when I came to this country in 1946, June of 1946, the Christians could speak freely, and there really was freedom of speech. Well, more and more and more is controlled by the government, what we can say and how we can say. And also, Hitler, because of the churches were weak and they were blinded, he took over the churches too. Many pastors who didn't go along, like my own pastor, were persecuted, and some of them were even killed, like Bonhoeffer and Niemöller. There are so many similarities. You have to be so careful nowadays what you say, and even for pastors, they are restricted what they can say.
Yeah.
Government is, like I say, government is completely taking over, not only the medical situation, but also in our lives. There's less freedom of speech, and that's a danger.
I can't imagine what's in your heart living this for the second time.
Well, I tell you very honestly, when the government first started this last term, or the term before, I had nightmares about the Nazis.
Wow.
And I wasn't the only one. There are people that were born in America that had the same thing happen. I I don't want to be too drastic what I say about our president, but when he was campaigning and the things that were promised, oh, the wonderful promises and everything, unfortunately, we have become a very, very materialistically money-minded society. And that happened the same in Germany. Hitler made wonderful promises. Everything, we're going to live in a utopia. But that did not happen. Yes, those that joined the Nazi Party, yeah, they had a lot of benefits. But when the Jews were persecuted, and they say in a country where the Jews are being persecuted, the Christians come right afterwards. I have a lot of things that I could tell you. I'm a speaker. I share my testimony. And when I first started out 35 years ago, I was invited to any kind of school. Nowadays, I'm not. I was told many times, yes, you can come and speak, but you got to take Jesus out of it. And I said, no, I can't, because he's my Lord and Savior. And the very fact that I am alive and that I have the ability to come here and talk about it, I said that's all due to Christ. And he's the center of my life, and I can't deny him. Well, then I'm sorry you can't come. And more and more and more the schools. And soon when we had 9/11, the doors of the schools opened wide, and prayers at ball games and everything. But as soon as we were safe again, so to speak, this changed back. Government has too much control. When I learned about the government and everything, it says government for the people. But I don't know. I question that.
Anita, you are a delight and an inspiration, and I want to say thank you. I understand this is the first time you've done anything with Skype. You were wonderful, yes. And you are an inspiration.
I didn't even know what's.
Oh, you did a great job. Well, listen, thank you, and thank you for being so transparent and open. We pray God's blessings and peace to you, and thank you for the warning. I would hope that every Christian and every church leader would pick up your book and read it.
Yes, very true.
Okay. Blessings.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks for being with us.
And God bless you.
God bless you. All right. Her name is Anita Dittman, and this is the book right here. It's called Trapped in Hitler's Hell. A young Jewish girl discovers the Messiah and his faithfulness in the midst of the Holocaust. Much of what she talked about with us today is dealt with in great detail in the book, and there's an accompanying DVD that goes with this. You know, when you hear a testimony like that, now I hope you understand the moment that we just experienced by talking to someone who's lived through the Holocaust like that, and the warning that she's giving us, and the simpleness of her life, the simpleness of clean water and clean clothes, and asking God to help you escape and the path of escape. Boy, there's so much to learn from her testimony, and I would hope that we would take it to heart. So you may want to get this, and pastors, you may want to pick this up and read it. It's pretty amazing. And at the age of 7, when she accepted Christ, at that young age, it gave her the fortitude to stand in the midst of those concentration camps the way that she did, and then to find her mother the way she did. Fascinating, fascinating story. I tell you what I want to do. I want to give away the book and the DVD to caller number 5. Caller number 5. You'll get both of them. The number is 541-776-5368. 541-776-5368. We'll get the book and the DVD. With one thing in mind, you'll share it with others. You'll take time to share it with others. And if you didn't win it, you may want to take a look at it and get a copy at the bookstores, okay? And don't forget, this is Memorial Day weekend, so remember what it's all about, the price that's been paid for our freedoms and our liberties. And think about that, cherish that, and if you have a flag, well, find a place at home to display your flag, okay? God bless you. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.